Okay, hey everybody. So, what we will be talking about today is the Wednesday Wars February questions. This is different. So, I posted in our Google Classroom, and I'm going to go to it on April 21st, okay? And I said, first post of the day is dedicated to the Wednesday Wars. This is the format of the questions I would like you to use. So these formatted questions are a little bit different than Miss Oprah Stevens, but she said that you guys can use this. They are the exact same questions. I just broke it up to make sure that we are all answering every part of the question. So for example, in number 3, it has, what does Holling ask Merrily that even surprises him? You have to answer that question. And in the same number 3, it says, what does this show about how he's changing as a character? So do we see how there are more than one part to a question that we need to make sure we answer? Okay. So a lot happened in this chapter. So for starters, it says, read the following passage, then explain what you think the collapse of the ceiling in the perfect living room symbolizes or shows about the Hood family. What is happening to the perfect hint? What is happening to the perfect living room, and how is that similar to what is happening to the Hood family? So also here, while you read this document, you're going to see that I bolded I put in bold the hints. So really pay attention to those because that will help you out a lot. So this question's asking how their ceiling caved in. It says, right then a whole series of low chords sounded from the piano in the living in the living room. Followed by a roaring crash as the entirely new plastered ceiling fell, smashing down the top of the baby grand piano, ripping the plastic seat cushions, flattening the fake tropical flowers, tearing the gleaming mirror from the wall, and spreading its glittery shards onto the floor, where they mixed with the dank, wet plaster that immediately began to settle into the carpet, stain it forever. There's tension growing in the beginning of the chapter. How Holling's father is acting towards Holling's sister, how he's acting towards Holling. You see how much he puts, like how he always reflects back to his work. And you can see how that is starting to become very draining. Okay. And when it says symbolizes, what do you think symbolizes mean? If you think about it. So in books like The Perfect Living Room, that's how Holling's dad is, right? That's how the family is shown in the book. Like, they are perfect. The dad strives to be perfect. And now the living room is crashing, which goes with how the family's going too. They're not crashing, but they're definitely changing. Holling's changing as well. Okay, so 2. How does Mr. Hood react to the collapse of the ceiling? So you're going to answer that question. And then it says, what does he do and what does the show about him? Hint, is this how the businessman of the year should be acting? So he's mad, right? Picture your ceiling collapsing. Anybody would be mad. But then it's a Friday night and this occurs, and he calls people to fix it. And he's very rude to them on the phone. Like, he's like, I don't care if it's a Saturday, you're going to come here and fix this, like, all this stuff. And that question saying is, like, should he be that rude? Like, why, he just won this award for Businessman of the Year. How is he being that rude to people who are working. So then how does Holling ask Marilee that surprises even him? So how does it show how he's changing as a character? So now it's Valentine's Day, and Holling asked Marilee on a date, literally out of nowhere. Like, he didn't even expect himself to say that. He even said after he asked her, he turned around and was like, wait, was that really me? Would Holling have had the courage to do this in September? So what is changing about Holling? That now he's asking a girl on a date. He's, having conflicts at home. Like, what is changing with Holling? Is he sticking up for himself more? Is he chasing after what he really wants? Is it with theater? Is he now joining more plays? He's now talking to Marilee. Is he standing up to his dad? Make sure you definitely pay attention to how he's changing. In what way? Is he gaining confidence? So all these things, right? So what does Mr. Hood say when Holling tells him about his plans with Marilee? What does this show about him? Hint. How do you think a father should respond to his son sharing this news? So Holling shares with his dad that he is taking Marilee out, right? You would think a father would say, give some fatherly advice, saying, make sure you're a gentleman, all this stuff. But instead he brought it back to work. And instead he was like, you better do it soon because I'm taking over a father's business. They're going to be out of business after I come in. And it's just kind of surprising because Holling's like, okay, I wasn't even talking about contracts and you brought that up. So you see that how it's consistently work is always brought up. So describe Holling's date with Marilee. Where do they go? What did they talk about? What else did you notice? Hint. What does Holling secretly wish Mr. Kowalski would forget to do? So Marilee and Holling, they go to Shakespeare, right? And they see Romeo and Juliet. They go to a theater. Very nice. And what they talk about is they're pretty much making fun of their fathers, in a way where it's harmless, but they're like more venting about it. They're venting to each other because their dads are in the same career. So all day they're talking about their architect work and for the job that they both want right now. You will see what Holling does. It's something that he blames himself for. Okay. And then that same thing rolls over to question 6. So then it says, explain what happens at the school board meeting where Mr. Hood and Mr. Kowalski present their designs for the new junior high school. So what we see here on page 148, that Holling showed Marilee pretty much his father's design for the new junior high. And Marilee went home and showed her dad, and her dad copied those exact plans. So while Mr. Kowalski is speaking, he doesn't even say, he obviously didn't say, yes, I took these from Marilee, who got them from Holling. Since they're so similar, Holling's father is like looking at Holling thinking, is this a joke to you? You and your friend want to talk about my work. Like, this is my career. What did you do? And he gets upset. So then Holling writes 2 essays about the meaning of Romeo and Juliet. The first one is about being careful who you trust. The second one is about how it's hard to care about 2 things at once, like Romeo's family and also Juliet. How do these 2 messages relate to what Holling experienced with Merrily? Mention specific moments from this chapter. So, for this question, think about how they had a great night together. And then think about how Holling sacrificed giving up because he trusted Merrily. So, he was confiding in her about what his father had planned, and then she went behind his back. Think about how now what Holling thinks about Merrily, and if he even trusts her still. And then think about how that changes, because then he has a change of mindset, and then you'll see why he wrote 2 letters. Because first he wrote one and he stuck with it, and then he wrote another one where he's more understanding of Merrily. So then for 8, why do you think Holling goes to Merrily's house, and what does he bring with him? What does it show about he changing as a character? So, Holling shows up. So obviously Holling took back his first letter because it made Merrily upset. They're outside and out of school. They're upset at one another. She walks off, and he starts to feel, in a way, guilty. And he starts to reflect back on the Romeo and Juliet play. And so he's reflecting, and he's starting to, I wouldn't say forgive, but he's starting to see Merrily's side. So he shows up to her house, and he has 2 Cokes with him and a rose. And he knocks right on Mr. Kowalski's door. He goes right in. He's confident. Could you say he's gaining confidence? I would say yes. So then 3 more questions left. Mr. Hoodhood calls Mr. Kowalski a chump and says he can't play for keeps for taking his company out of the running for the new junior high school contract. What does this show about both Mr. Kowalski and Mr. Hoodhood? Hint, how are they very different types of businessmen? So Mr. Kowalski copied Mr. Hoodhood's contract, right? We know that. Because he received this information from Merrily, who received it from Holling. Mr. Hoodhood, we've seen from in the beginning of the chapter how he talks to people about fixing his ceiling. We saw how angry he got at Holling, just how mad he would get and how defensive he would become over his business. And then Kowalski, knowing that it was wrong of him to do that, he backs out. And instead of, Mr. Hoodhood, I wouldn't say thanking him, but appreciating that he backed out because he didn't get it fair and square, he's still calling him a chump. He says he can't play for keeps. So what is this showing about both of them? And also Mr. Kowalski still lets Holling into his house after, right? He's still very yeah, you can see my daughter. So see how that's different.